Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. I'm in the studio today with two of my favorite people on the planet. Let's give a shout out to my main man, John B. in the place to be.
Hello.
John rocks with me hard, in and out all the time. And then we have this other guy who is gallivanting all across the country, making great things happen to those who often listen to the show. Let's say welcome to Mark Bassett, my reoccurring co-host. He's in the studio today.
It's good to be back, Kareem, back from Southern California.
SoCal. Man,
Newport Beach, baby.
So what's going on, Mark? Why are you always leaving us to the Newport Beach? What you got going on?
That time I had a board meeting, so I flew out to Southern California.
Mark, we thought you were retired. Isn't that what we said when he first came in, that Mark is retired?
That's what I heard.
My definition of retired means you don't do anything. I'm doing a few things. So
okay.
I'm part-time employee. By the way, if you don't mind, I'd like to, I don't know if she's listening or not, but today is Mary's 60th birthday. So wish Mary a happy 60th birthday.
Wait a minute. Just a happy, come on, Mary. You deserve cake and ice cream at least.
Oh, she had a surprises waiting for her on the main floor this morning, and we're going to go out to dinner tonight. And then we're having a big birthday party this weekend. All the kids, all 7 kids, are flying in from all over the country.
Does she know this, or are you ruining
She knows it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm like, don't ruin this. Yeah. They're all coming in.
They're all coming in from San Diego to Boston.
When is this?
Saturday.
On Saturday.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go. I mean, that's what mothers love for birthday gifts. Mark, great job. Well, I just want to say happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mary. Happy birthday to you. That's awesome.
Yep.
All right. So we're here. Mark is back in the studio. You're back, Mark. Mark, how has everything been treating you? Because it seems like it's been forever since we've been able to nail down, with me having to move schedules around and you bouncing all over the
traveling
country.
a lot. Yeah. So what's the question?
So how you been? I haven't had a chance to really talk to you.
We were in here a couple weeks ago with Mary. We've been doing great. You know, we've cooking a big nice vacation out to California, work vacation kind of a thing, and then
I told Mark every time he leaves, he comes back a little bit darker.
Yeah. I'm trying to get there, man. Trying to get there.
John,
I'm a beach guy at heart.
You're a beach guy. Yeah. Hawaii.
Yep.
I think that pretty much sums it up. What's going on with you, John?
Not much. I've been basking in the glow of these fluorescent lights in the studio.
Yeah, I see the effect that they're having on that tan.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a vitamin D deficiency.
But we're going to get into the things that are hot off the press today. Everybody is pretty much aware of what's happening. The Queen, who we were talking about, died on last week or whenever that was. She is now laying in state. You know, I'm always amazed. I'm not so much into the monarchy as I am into history and just traditions and how traditions often play out. And so I had an opportunity, you know, I sat and took in some of the initial transition from where she was going into, Westminster Hall. Yeah, Westminster Hall.
Yeah.
She was going from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall. And when I saw them walking, it reminded me of Princess Diana, you know, when she passed and her sons were walking behind the casket. So it was really interesting. I love the buildings, and just to see, you know, thousands of people, you know, lining the streets to pay tribute to someone who obviously has given a life of service as the Queen of the UK. It's amazing. So, but one thing that came to mind is that the last time we were talking, John, if you remember, I was like, I don't want Charles to be the king.
He's not very likable.
Well, let me tell you what happened. I didn't like him because in my mind, like Princess Diana, we had never seen a princess be crowned, come into place and all this other stuff. But Lady Di, she had such a strong hold, I think, on, especially from Americans, for Americans,
Mm-hmm.
And we saw how she was an international woman. And for Black folks, she spent a lot of time in places like Haiti and Jamaica and Africa. And so it was something that I think
HIV was a big passion.
yeah,
for her.
huge,
Yeah.
and it was something that was killing, people of color at
Yep.
that time. And so I had my particular feelings, but what I learned, Rob, Mark, is that there are people who actually follow this thing. And so Mother Walker, my mom, said, "Hey, listen, I know you feel that way, but I heard you talking about it on the radio show. But let me tell you, I watched this documentary and she set me straight. She was talking about how Diana was not Charles's first love.
No, Camilla was.
Camilla was.
Camilla, you should watch the Netflix series called The Crown. It's all in there.
Hey, that's exactly what she told me.
Yeah.
She says, so, when you say that, what you're saying is that you're fighting for arranged marriages and things, and, people being excluded because of where they come from and they don't fit the pedigree. But Diana was, this beautiful, cute, young, sweet thing who had the right pedigree. She was not as outwardly spoken as I guess Camilla was.
I think Camilla was married as well.
And well, yeah. So what happened was they were in love. They met at some younger point.
Yeah.
And then when Charles went off to do his duty in the military, came back, she was married. And so, I think that there was still a little rendezvous thing going on. They just never could break the tie. And so I have to change. I fight for true love on this one. So I guess Camilla, we won't call you Camilla DeVille. You will be the Queen Consort. We'll call you Queen Consort Camilla. But I just wanted to get that because I said that, and then when I got the facts, I said, wow. So the family tried to bring in Diana and said, hey, this is the best choice, but his heart was always with her. Because I know Diana referred to her as the third person in their marriage. Well, that's what happened in arranged marriages. So let love win. So we're going to move forward from that. But I was looking and speaking about this. There was a conversation that I was having. And while we were talking, King Charles III, which sounds funny to me, was talking about, he was giving his first address to the UK and its Commonwealth. I think 15 nations or whatever are under their majesty or whatever. I don't know what you'll call it. But he was talking about the countries of African descent as the monarchy now has to come to terms with how they have been a part of slavery and history.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there is this big thing. So I started looking at it. There's this huge thing where countries like Jamaica and Trinidad and all of these island countries that are under Great Britain rule, that are part of their Commonwealth, are really considering no longer being a part of
the
it.
Commonwealth.
Yeah.
That's again in this Netflix series, and again, I don't know how factual.
I'm not a.
The queen or the king travels around to all these commonwealths, and part of the goal is to encourage them. It's a PR campaign, to kind of stay in the Commonwealth versus fracturing off. That's kind of part of the big emphasis of these kind of tours that they do.
So it appears that Charles is now in a position to have to reckon and really kind of bring into a real modern day conversation. How do we deal with, how the king or the kings, the monarchy of Great Britain has, the role that they played in this whole thing called the slave trade. So I thought that was really interesting as we were taking a look at that, especially in considering we talk about race and topics of race on this show. Going from there to another situation, Georgetown University. Now, you guys have heard me have the conversation about how my family was integral in keeping Georgetown open.
1832 or 1833, is that year?
Yeah, yes, right around there, right?
Mary, after our last show, Mary, because you talked about it when we were here.
Yeah,
she went out as we were driving home and Googled it all up and everything.
I mean, thank you, Mary. She's such a historian. I love it. But this is the cool thing. So I had been in contact and just kind of picking up pieces where my cousin left off in her story that we saw on Finding Our Roots on TV. And so recently, when I say recently, I mean in the past couple of days, I've been able to connect with one of the chief historians at Georgetown University. And also I became a member of the GU 272 Descendants Club. So they put all of the information that's going on there. And it's interesting because I think she must be like a fifth cousin that is now, she's 72 years old, and she has now gone back to Georgetown. And she thought of it as being a way for her to go back and just kind of do this for
To
the
visit or
ancestors.
go to school?
To go to school. She's actually
at
enrolled.
72.
At 70.
Wow.
Living
Wow.
on campus.
Wow.
In a dorm room. I thought it was so
Grandma is your roommate. Yeah.
But she was just sharing how she was so excited about it. And so, you know, and they've made some concessions for descendants of the 272 who were sold to be able to come in under this certain provision in the university. Now, I don't know if there's funding for that particular thing, but I'm honestly thinking, I'm like, you know what? It would really be cool to go back and get, you know, I was talking with them, I'm like, get a degree in history and maybe another one in sociology and kind of, you know, make those types of studies something that I would really take a look at. That's something that would really interest me. I thought it was pretty cool. So, but there has been at Georgetown already, the students have passed to make reparations a real thing.
Do they have any power?
The students?
Yeah. Something tells me no.
Well, the students have the power of attendance.
Yeah,
you know, we come here to go to school. But no, honestly, to your point, the students voted almost unanimously to do reparations.
Of course they did. Yes.
And then, of course, you know, students, we give peace a chance, right? But the administration is on pause, of course, because what would it look like? I think because
this was almost 200 years ago.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it's almost 200 years ago. Yeah. But this is the thing. This is when people say that, we're going to talk about that today. This was nearly 200 years ago. And I'm seeing you tip good. What is she saying here? It seems as if none have power to make reparations a real thing. But this is what I want to say to Mark, to your point. This has been nearly 200 years ago. And whenever that conversation comes up, it's a difficult conversation. I understand why it's a difficult conversation. And so I don't get angry about it, but I do think that we can't ignore the conversation because it has to take place.
Sure.
So students have said yes. The university is kind of like, you know, we're opening up a can of worms.
That's a real can of worms.
How do we deal with it?
Yeah.
But I say we deal with it the way that we dealt with Hiroshima. I say that we deal with it the way that we deal with Native America. I'd say we deal with it we're not opposed or lost to those things. But students said no, but the university has.
Students said yes.
Yes, students said yes.
Yeah.
But the university has, and that's where I was going, Tip Good. You took the words out of my mouth. The students said yes. The university has named some buildings after, one of the buildings is Isaac Hawkins. And it's the building, one of the dormitories is Isaac Hawkins, which is named the first name of the slave, which happens to be my fifth grandfather on that bill of sale. And I think about it, to say I'm sorry is good. To acknowledge that is good. To name a building, it's great. But really, what is the change that is going? How do you right the things that you have done wrong? And so that becomes.
I guess I kind of go like, can you ever? I mean, so how long do you do stuff?
You may not be able to do it forever, and you may not be able to do it completely. But like Tip Good, but we're feeling the repercussions of ancestors 200 years ago. And I want to say this because my family originally was in the Maryland area. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're going to talk about the legacy and the eternal or the lasting impact of these types of things. So my family originally was from Maryland. So the Hawkins family was in that area. They were sold. They were actually owned by Jesuit priests. That's a whole nother conversation that I need to have. I would love to have like one of the Jesuit priests that are still out there. These are
there's
Jesus
a lot
folks.
of them.
Yeah, the Jesus folks. We have this
they're intellectuals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you would think, okay, not only you're a man of faith, but you are the intellectuals of these religious places. How do you reconcile that? First of all, owning slaves, and then the 272 that were sold, 272 that were sold, it equates to the largest group sale of slaves in United States history.
I'm surprised.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I would have thought there'd been bigger.
But I mean, you know, they were doing individuals, they were picking, but in terms of a group sale,
as a whole group,
and I think that the 272 sold for like $114,000 or something like that, which would equate to about $4 million or so in today's currency. But those individuals were moved, uprooted,
to New
from
Orleans or
Maryland
whatever.
to Maringouin, Louisiana.
Yeah.
Now, this is what's funny is because I grew up as a kid going to visit my big mama, my grandmother. We called her Mama Pearl. She was my great grandmother. And in the movie or in the TV series Finding Our Roots, Louis Gates, I think, is the host. They start the story of Essie Patha off with her grandmother, my great grandmother, Mama Pearl. And it was just interesting when they went to Louisiana and they were showing, the house that Mama Pearl lived in. I'm like, going, wait a minute, as a kid, I remember being 8, 9 years old, running in. There's a huge ravine that was across the street, catching snakes and lizards and, getting eaten alive by fire ants when I was down picking up pecans. Nobody told me to be careful of the fire ants when you're picking pecans for a pecan pie. And so I ended up they're halfway up my legs and just started stinging me like crazy. And I'm running down the street, get naked to get away from them. But it was interesting to see my history come alive in a way that I've never seen it before. And for it to be chronicled on TV, and then you see people that are connected to you. So it was exciting. But what I'm saying, my thought process is Maringouin is a very depressed area where we came from. Now, what did happen is that when my family was able to get to buy land, they ended up buying some land that had some oil rights to it. And so they fared pretty well in the end, even though they went from like about 100 acres to about 18 acres. But going back down to that area, the entire clan is still there. When I look at the Hawkins, the Bowens, which is the part of the clan that we came from, and the other groups of it, they're all still in this depressed area of town. Many of them have never gone to school. Many of them have never graduated from high school because it is a cyclical part of what this holds. And so when you say that was over 200 years ago, I often say, so can you imagine 200 years of poverty that are being impressed upon you, that are continuing to see the tentacles of that thing expressed in life? And that becomes a great part of the conversation. It was my mom, it was the middle of nowhere. It truly is. Baton Rouge is probably the closest city around. And as a kid, I enjoyed it when I was younger, but when I got older, it's kind of like, what are you going to go out there?
What do you
we're
do?
getting chased by wild boars and things, and like, I'm good. Take me back to the city. But anyways, so we're having that conversation. My hope is that we can get him to be one of the guests on this show. So as we talk about it, and I think just from a historical perspective, and to ask the question, Mark, which is what I've heard a number of times that we've talked about it. How do you even begin to right such an injustice? But I think that the educational institution is a great place to start, because when you can deny people a lot of things, but when you deny them the right to be educated or a right to read, that is a different form of bondage that has a long-standing history. So I'm glad to be able to have that conversation. Hope you're interested in it. If not, I'll still be interested. It doesn't matter. If you are
go to a different show then.
Turn the channel. All right. So we're going to get into one of the things that we do. And Mark, I want to thank you because I was thinking about this. We got people watching from India. Bro, Vasatada Prasad from India. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Did
today.
Our friends from Norway ever come back? Or?
I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Right.
We didn't catch them on last week, but maybe we'll catch them this week. I don't know. But what I do want to say is we began this journey, you and I together, when we were talking about making change and being a real proponent. And before we came on air, we were having a conversation about a meeting that he and I had that we both Mark looked at me and he was so infuriated by the lack of empathy that the other gentleman had. He was like, listen, this meeting's over. Let's go. He was more mad than I was.
I was.
But Mark, that started us on a conversation that we had, like, how do you make things happen? And we were talking about we should really push and challenge people to find ways to have a courageous conversation on race. And I want you to begin because what I love about you is not the fact, you could not be more different than I am. But what I love about you is that your heart is sincere, and even the things that you don't understand, you're willing to investigate. And this summer, you had an event. Nobody knew what they were signing up for, probably except for the two of us. But Mark did what we're going to talk about today. He took a risk and stepped up and had a very courageous conversation. He created an environment to where he could bring in people who were very different. I was a part of it, and other individuals that we were kind of connected to, and put us in a space to really have a good time in a very safe, fun environment with people who I believe you thought could be open to have some dialogue, and some great things came out of that. And I've been thinking and talking about that experience, and I want to share with other people, because as we continue in this political season that we're going into, we already see what's happening. You know, the dog whistles to both sides, the divisiveness that's already starting, and we've got to have a way to make a change. Mark, why don't you share a little bit about what you put together?
Sure. I'm assuming you're talking about the cookout.
Yeah,
So I had a
hey, notice what did you call it, Mark?
Cookout.
The
That's
cookout.
I always call it a cookout. I love to entertain people.
Mark did not have a party or a barbecue. He had a cookout.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I love to entertain people, bring people over to our house, because it's just a great way to get to know people better and to share with each other. So I had a cookout, a barbecue, a get together at my house. I invited Kareem and Mother Walker were there. A guy who, Kareem is his main mentor.
But we've mentored together.
Yeah, and I meet with them now. Frank Sanders and his wife,
and their kids.
Yeah. And then a guy that I mentored when I was at Dow, and who was and now is again Frank's boss, Scott Snyder, his wife, and their 2 kids, I think it was. And then a friend of mine, Edgar Martinez, and his wife Yolima.
Which were from where?
They're originally from Colombia.
Yeah. I mean, this was a very diverse group of individuals. Yeah. So we started out. Mark, come on, you were the host. Of course, I was the last one to get there. As
of course,
usual.
Reinforcing stereotypes. So. The way I run these things, it's just very casual. I throw some stuff on the grill. I buy some salads, and I set up a table I tried to set up on the back patio, but it was too hot. So
Mark had us coach. I was like, Mark, listen now. I already got a permanent tan. I don't need any more sun.
So we moved the table down into
Thank
the
you,
yard.
Mary. Thank you, Mary.
I told Mary no, and then was it you that came? And
I was like, dude, we gonna bake in the sun.
All right. Anyway, and it was just a lot of fun. People sitting around the table, kids running around the yard. And we talked about all sorts of things. I think the really important things, like when you're talking, you have very different people from very different cultures talking about things. And I think what's really important is everyone accept people for who they are.
Yep.
And I think one of our big problems in society today is people get offended so easily.
Absolutely.
And no one, I've been known to say things I probably should word differently. Mary, for sure, has been
Mary's worse than I am.
Yeah, and but other people didn't get bothered by it. They laughed about it.
Absolutely.
And so it was just a really fun afternoon, and people really got to know each other. And that's how you build relationships and how you begin to make things happen.
And so just having fun over a good meal, which Mark, you did a great job, led to us having some really serious conversations. And so I just want to continue. We're going to kind of talk about how we transition from just having fun and eating and all of the la of the day to really getting into some real meaningful conversations, how that occurred, how we were able to sustain that without being angry. We left in a better place than where we started. I want you guys to stay tuned. We're going to be back with more of this conversation on how we're going to challenge you to have courageous conversations on race. This is Kareem. Stay tuned with more United Shades of Gray.
You're listening to United Shades of Grey on WSGW.
Hey, this is Kareem for the second segment of United Shades of Grey. We're in the studio with John B. and Mark Bassett. Mark, before we went to the commercial break, we were talking about your bold stance to create an environment, to do what we've been talking for a long time. A lot of times we talk about issues that are very divisive, but you said, you know what, how do we actively bring people back to a place that we can have this fun? So you created an opportunity where Mark had a cookout, so appropriately named, knowing the people that you're bringing in. Don't send me to a picnic or a barbecue. Invite me to the cookout. Yeah. So Mark, you came over. You had Mark. Mark came over and we had dinner at the church. And
I did. You invited me to your church for your 9th anniversary.
Yep.
And to say I felt a little bit out of place would probably be an understatement, but I was there. I really enjoyed it. And you guys had us over for after service meal. It was great.
So food is a great way to, breaking bread is a great way to just begin to make people feel comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately to have tough conversations, it's really helpful if you have a relationship to begin with.
Yeah.
And so I always look for ways to begin to build a relationship in a non-threatening kind of manner. What
is cool though is that we used our connection, our relationship to kind of foster. So Mary comes in, Mary comes with you. So, our relationship becomes a bridge or a way for us to foster some trust among the other people that were with us. Because nobody else knew each other.
Ultimately, again, if you're going to have a tough conversation and no one knows each other, it can be really scary, especially, if you're, a middle-class white male or, and so it can be scary.
I'm going to tell you what's funny. Okay. This is where we talk about biases, and we all have biases, right?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. So when I'm like going, Mark is about to invite me to this bar. Lord Jesus, what is this food going to be like? And I was thinking, like, is the meat going to be half cooked? Like in my mind, I thought things.
Like your steak well done? Is that what you're saying?
Am I going to end up with raisins in the potato salad? Like, I didn't know what was getting ready to happen. All of the things that, these are things that we talk about. And differences, and black folks have biases, and white people.
What were you guys? Was that what you were talking about when you guys all came over together?
Yeah, we were kind of laughing about it. We were like, the food was actually good.
Pinot Grigio served.
What was it that Mary made a particular dish that was really
corn pudding?
Was that what
baked beans? Probably
baked beans. Oh, the baked beans. Mary did her thing on the baked beans.
Yeah, she did.
I said this was really good, and so the food was exceptional. We had a great time, and I'll tell you, culture. This is how I think it's so funny. So I've experienced flan before. Going, to different countries and cultures has been something that I've always had the expression of doing. Having a Spanish minor and going, you're going to have those experiences, right? So Frank and my mom, this was the first time ever that they've ever had seen flan, heard flan, and she's probably gonna be like, what in the world are you doing? You're not supposed to tell these things. But this is about growing and how we operate and how well we deal with cultural differences. Well, I'm eating I like flan. It's super sweet, but I like it.
Yolima makes a great flan.
Oh, and Yolima did an amazing job on making this flan.
Yeah.
Well, so my mom's like, okay, I'll try it. Frank's like, sure, I'll try it. And I just could not wait because I knew that my mom is a texture person. So she takes a piece and she puts it in her mouth and she's like, and I could see the eyebrows raised and the eyes, and she just looked and she kept taking a slice. She just continued to go until she ate her entire serving of flan. And I thought I can't wait till after we're done because this conversation is going to be funny. And then I looked down at the table. Frank is a young, he may be 29, 30-year-old guy. And, his wife ate it. She's pretty culturally diverse. But I could see Frank's eyes go, and he lightly puts his fork down and he puts his napkin on it. I thought
he's hiding it.
He's hiding it. Yeah. So it was funny. We're sitting there, but this goes to speak that whenever you get in to spaces and you're dealing and having these opportunities, if it's a different or a change in culture, we all can experience some things that we don't know how to handle. And they didn't want to be rude, but so they were stuffing down something that, instead of just saying, simply, nah, this ain't my thing. I tried it. I appreciate it. I'm not used to this type of texture.
Right.
So one of the things I want to say is always be authentically honest about where you are. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. There are a lot of people who are from South America that don't like flan, so I think it's really important that the integrity of the conversation really depends on people being honest with where they were, or taking it like a champ, like you did, Mom. I appreciate you scoffing it down and smiling like, and they were like, hey, would you like to take some home? Oh, no, I'm
thanks.
stuffed.
Mary always takes it. She has it for breakfast.
Does she?
Yeah. Because it's basically eggs, sugars, and milk.
Yeah,
Right?
and you can taste it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can taste the eggs. But anyways, so we're going to talk today. So Mark, that conversation, that opportunity for us to eat, once the food was gone, then what you did is Mark segued. Mark has, for those of you who are listening, the most amazing, diverse selection of music that I've ever, I thought I was diverse. Mark goes back and he has all kinds of music. So your soundtrack,
I had a playlist that
music
I created.
and food become the backdrop for that conversation.
And so I had a lot of and again, it was an outdoor cookout. I wanted it to be kind of fun. And so I had a selection of early 80s synth pop kind of a thing.
Yep.
And I love kind of funk music from the early, late 60s, early 70s. And so it was a kind of a mix match of those two genres.
And so we began to talk about, musical taste and things that we liked in music. And then Yolima, and what's her husband's name again? Edgar. So Yolima and Edgar, they get up and they start dancing.
They're big salsa people.
Salsa dancers.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there and they're dancing around the table, babies, black babies here, white babies here. Everybody's just, it was, I took pictures of it because it was so great to see the white mother pick up and she's holding the black baby. Yolima was dancing with everybody's baby, and vice versa.
By the way, she's not allowed to dance with any other husband.
And did
Edgar make that clear?
Edgar made it really clear.
Edgar used to work for me, and they're both big salsa dancers. And I wanted to throw a party where they teach everybody salsa. And he goes, "I'll be happy to show all the wives, but no husband can dance with Yolima."
He can dance with your wife, but you can't dance with his.
Yeah. So, which is again very stereotypical.
Well, you got to see Yolima. You can understand why he feels that way.
Very stereotypical Latin.
So what happens is this leads to a conversation, and I just really wanted to give us some guidelines that I thought would be really good. And Mark, these are actually in sync with what you did, just kind of naturally as a part of your character. But I want to challenge those of you who are listening to these conversations to do similar things. There's going to be so much opportunity for us to be divided. I guarantee you. This is 2022, hit 2023. It is going to be straight up racist versus the liberals versus the KKK and skinheads, and everybody's going to have a title and a lane, and you're going to have to pick where you are. But I am asking that you all challenge yourselves to think differently about this and think of this as an opportunity for you to fight for what I consider. I heard Sleepy Joe teach a message or give a speech on the soul of America. I think that the soul of America is when we as a nation are able to arise above our differences, to notice what makes us great, and to fight for those differences to be incorporated in terms of who we are as a people. So I want you to challenge yourself. So the first thing is to lead with shared values, justice, opportunity, community, equity. You got to lead with the same values. So Mark, in that group of people, what did you see was consistent, or what did you see as a common thread that we all embrace?
I think in a lot of ways, you get back to kind of I think people are people irrespective of race, and what really drives them. And I think by and large, 99.something% of those people in the world are good people when it's all said and done. And so they have a shared value system around family is important. Friends are important. Relationships are important. And I think a lot of our differences are not the what, but kind of the how.
Yep.
And so I, ultimately everybody there, I think, cares about their family, cares about other people, and is just trying to make a better world for their families and for their friends.
And I was listening to conversations. Everyone had a base element of faith.
Yeah.
So we all had this underlying basis of faith by which we have a desire for the common good and the betterment of people. So I thought that was important. So
I think that's part of human nature, though, to be honest with
What-
you. I don't know. I think faith, I think we had this discussion the last time I was here. I think faith reinforces that,
okay.
but I think it's part of human nature that you want to make the world a better place.
I don't believe that.
I
You think that
do.
too? Did you agree with that too?
No.
Okay.
Well, I was just having a conversation about this last night with my dad, who's a pastor, but I don't want to hijack the.
No, but go ahead, because
Well-
I think that this is an interesting point, because I don't think that people are intrinsically good.
No, I think my dad hit it pretty much right on the nose. I've still got a little bit of thinking and digesting to do about that conversation, but his stance was pretty much people of themselves have no moral compass whatsoever, and what morals we do have been passed down by whatever culture our common ancestor was. And if you're thinking from a faith-based perspective, that's Adam and Eve and Noah, I guess you would,
Right.
after the flood. And it has to do with the same way every culture has a different version of dragons. That legend has kind of
But
permutated
don't you
through.
find it interesting? We're kind of going off.
No, but
Isn't
I
it
think that this is
interesting
important.
though that if you look at all these different religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, at the core of those religions, the teachings are relatively similar. Forget about the God. It's, basically treat other people the way you would want to be treated, love other people.
Exactly.
And I actually believe that that's part of what we are as humans.
But why
And
do
so-
those teachings exist? Because I don't
Because
think man
people
has
are torn. There's now we're really getting into it. But
Socrates,
yeah.
the id, the
I think
ID.
it's the yin and the yang of people. Yes, you are driven by selfish interests. You have that, but you also have a desire. I think it's innate. It's innate in people that, like, if they have kids, they'll do almost anything for their kids. They're willing
Absolutely.
to, and so it's that kind of dichotomy of people that, yes, they have selfish aspects of them. But if I look back on myself, and I've gone through periods of time where I'm focused on myself, and I've gone through periods of time where I'm focused on bigger things. And if you're really honest, I've been most satisfied and fulfilled and most at peace when I'm not focused on myself. And I think that's part of being a human.
I think I would beg to differ. And I think that the reason why you feel the best when you're not thinking of yourself is because that is the divine presence that takes place. And the divine, and I use the term divine or God or whatever. I think that power, that higher power, and making yourself take a look at the rest of the world, first of all, helps us to underscore how blessed we truly are. Secondly, that is what I think the writings are about. Us getting past our selfishness. I don't think the writings
To me,
would be
it's the
necessary.
chicken or egg. Does that exist when you're born? I think it does. The writings,
Babies
take that-
are. You don't have to teach a baby to be selfish.
well, they survival. They have to survive.
I mean, but they're gonna fight. They're gonna want. They want
Let's
all
get
the
back
toys.
to the topic at
But
hand.
this is.
Yeah.
But I think that
Yeah.
this is important because this conversation that we're having now, I can see this conversation being directly in line with other conversations that we don't want to have. When we talk about reparations, that's a very selfless conversation. An individual has to be able to look at the betterment of the whole or the other over themselves. And so I think these types of perspectives are very strong conversations for us to really understand. But you were saying something that we completely took the mic away from you in terms of the point that you were making. When I asked you, do you think that we are typically good people, that people are really thinking of other people more than they think of themselves?
Well, from my perspective of faith, I don't think that people are good in and of themselves.
Okay.
I think that would be, but I do think that given the passed down morals and the passed down conscience, I'll say, that the entirety of humanity kind of has at this point, I think we do tend to look out for other people in our tribe.
Yep.
Mhm.
that's about as far as that goes, I think.
Okay, but don't you think now, and the way that you phrase it, I think is very important, because if we're going to have real strong conversations on race, we've got to understand how people think, and that we have a tendency to preserve ours. And whenever there's an opportunity to be us and them, and that's often what happens when racial discussions break down, it becomes a discussion, instead of it being about us, it's a discussion about us and them.
It's a kind of a zero-sum game. If I give something, there's only so much, and if someone else gets more, I've got less.
Then we start otherizing people, and we try to figure out where we are. But we want to use those things, those core things that drive us together. And Mark, we have been able to do this, and I thank God for it, as a bridge for us to have stronger and deeper conversations. All right, now this is something that I want to say that I think is going to be very important, is that we have to know the counter narratives. And what I mean by counter narratives are these things. I'm going to kind of give you guys a list of them, and then we'll talk about them. The idea that racism is largely over or dying out over time. The second one is people of color are obsessed with race. I get that one. As a matter of fact, I think it was on the Art Lewis show one day. Someone was like, "Why are you always talking about race?" I'm like, every day I wake up, America, the world reminds me that I am a black man. The third, alleging discrimination is itself racist and divisive. Then there's claiming discrimination is playing the race card, opportunistic, hypocritical, and demagoguery. And I want to talk about that. And give me a pen really quick, because I want to stick a pin in this, because there was a situation that happened with Disney that I didn't agree with, and it was surrounding that space. Civil rights are a crutch for those who lack merit or drive. If we can address class inequality, racial inequality will take care of itself. And there it goes. It's about class, not about race. Then this last one, racism will always be with us, so it's a waste of time to talk about it. When we talk about those types of counter narratives, what comes to mind? Have we heard these before?
Sure, I've used the second to last one frequently.
Yeah. I mean, but these are the things that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important for us to be aware of those types of counter narratives?
Well, you ultimately have to try to seek to understand what that other person's perspective is. Ultimately, one of my first great bosses had this thing. Mark, it doesn't matter what you what you were intending to say. It's how someone took it.
Yeah.
And so unless you really understand what the perspective of someone else is and what their life has been like and kind of the trials and tribulations they deal with, it's really hard to understand that. And you've got to take that into account and keep that in mind as you talk about an issue.
And I think it's so important because, you were going on that seek first. We often seek first to be understood and then to understand others. But the reality of it is we should seek first to understand others, then to be understood. And I'll say this, coming from Black America, many times we don't feel understood about a lot of things. And I can, because these are conversations that come up. And one of the things that I've had a conversation with white Americans, like, well, you need to understand. I'm like, do you realize that I grew up in probably one of the whitest areas in town here? I went to a school that was a PWI. What is a PWI?
Predominantly white institution.
Oh, yeah. Acronyms. Yeah.
We were educating on last week.
Right.
Yeah. So I went to a predominantly white institution. I never had a Black educator from the time that I entered in to school. Was it kindergarten, then preschool? So since kindergarten all the way through high school. And then I only had one, Professor Scarborough at Michigan State. And I think I may have been a sophomore taking a social science class. But I had never seen that book. I had never had a Black teacher. So every instance, the officials where I was living, other than when I was in the city of Saginaw, have never looked like me. And so I've never lived in a Black community, fully Black community. So I understand how white America thinks. I understand how they operate. I understand what the values are. But most of my friends struggle to be put in situations that are not predominantly white spaces. And when in those situations, they struggle because it's uncomfortable. And I think that, Mark, when I saw you come in, you took it like a champ. Mark is like, okay, the music is good. It's probably a little loud. All of the clapping and the responding, they're yelling at the pastor. It's called call and response.
Yeah.
These are things that are different.
Totally different than a Catholic mass. I don't know if you've been to a Catholic
Yeah,
mass.
I have been.
I mean, it's totally different. Now I've seen it on TV and everything, but again, so it was role reversal, like a lot, I went to predominantly white institutions.
Yeah.
Like at Notre Dame, I've talked about it before, the black students tended to huddle together at the cafeteria.
Yep.
But I get it. I mean, because I was there, and it's like, there's no one else in here that looks like me. No one else in here that acts like me. Am I supposed to start doing something? And I actually was like, will they be offended if I actually start doing something? That thought actually went through my head. Like, so I'm just going to stand here and kind of bop along, but I'm not going to get into it because they might think I'm mocking them or something.
But that is the whole thing. So it requires for us, as you said before, we got to not take ourselves so serious sometimes. Yeah. And I'll say that to my black my brothers and sisters out there. We have been abused and overlooked in so many ways that our guard is up. And I understand why. Because you have not been a key piece of the narrative. You have not, your concerns and your issues and your values have not been at the forefront, or even your treatment. There's a conversation of
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go
yeah.
ahead.
So I just want to point to that point, again, and I don't know what was said, but Mary said something, and Frank was telling me when I had breakfast with him a couple of weeks later, he and his wife looked at each other and they're like, Mary, you didn't just say that. But he was like, they just laughed because they knew Mary at her heart was a good person.
Absolutely.
And she didn't mean anything like that.
Right.
She didn't really mean anything racist or pejorative or anything.
Right.
And so they just let it kind of if they didn't know her, they probably would have been offended by that.
Offended. Absolutely.
And it's back to I just assume by and large, most people aren't trying to be offensive. And I don't let it bother me unless they prove to themselves over and over again that that's who they really are.
Okay. And the way that I usually look at it, Mark, is if I don't know you, you don't get a pass with being offensive to me.
Right.
And if I do know you and you're offensive, I'm going to make sure you understand why it is offensive.
Because the person may not know, again, because of the cultural. I mean, it's one thing to use certain words, but it's another thing, like these microaggressions. It's just
yeah, I mean, because most people live life. They're living life not thinking about other individuals. Right. Whereas a part of how I have grown up my entire life as a black man, I was always thinking about what is acceptable and how do I fit into this space and make sure that it operates. So we want to make sure that you guys, one, you lead with shared values, use those values as a bridge. Always be aware of the counter narratives that exist, and then talk about the systemic obstacles to equality and how we can create a better situation. What I mean is, how can we begin to use our words and our relationships to target changes in systems that we don't like or we don't see? And so I think that becomes a really key piece of this. We're never going to be able to have enough time on this show because we have too much fun. And I hope that you guys are having fun. Mark, say something to the people before we leave. We got a minute.
No, I challenge everyone like I challenged them at the your uncle's kind of thing of step outside of your zone of comfort and try to interact with people outside of your normal circle and try to build relationships with people you may not normally do that. You'd be amazed what might happen.
What do you got to say, John?
I think that's exactly right. Be authentic to yourself first, and then kind of make sure that you're being polite to the people around you.
And I'm going to say this, you don't have to act like a brother to be my brother. As a matter of fact, I like you when you just as white as you want to be. I think it's important for us to understand that what is great is when we show that our diversity does not have to divide us. I know they both start with D, but our diversity has the ability to unite us. Let's begin to embrace one another. Let's have these courageous conversations. Put together a cookout, a barbecue, or a picnic, and let's get together and have these conversations. I long for a day where there's no black and white, but we're all united shades of gray.